Welcome to Dark Sleep Tales. I'm your storyteller, ready to share a creepy, real tale from Utah, March 2025. It's about Cody and a night shift gone wrong at Shadow Ranch. Hit subscribe now, and let's get spooky. A place called Shadow Ranch, out in the wilds of Utah, where the night hides more than shadows. Our story follows a guy named Cody, who took a job watching that land after dark. He thought it'd be easy money. He was wrong. Picture this: a lonely ranch under a big black sky, fences stretching into the fog, and a wind that whispers secrets. Ready? Let's step into the dark. Cody was 23, a tall guy with messy hair and a quiet way about him. He'd been bouncing between jobs, gas stations, fast food, until he saw an ad online. Night watchman needed, Shadow Ranch. $20 an hour. PM to 6 a.m. It sounded good, no customers. No bosses breathing down his neck. He called the number, and a gruff voice answered. "Name's Mr. Holt," the man said. "You got a car? Can you stay awake?" Cody said yes. "Good. Meet me tomorrow. Bring a flashlight." That was it, no big interview, no questions. Cody figured it was just guarding some cows. He didn't know the ranch's history yet. The next day, Cody drove out to Shadow Ranch. The road was dirt, winding through hills that loomed like sleeping giants. The ranch was old wooden fences sagging, a barn with peeling red paint, and a small house where Mr. Holt waited. He was short, with a gray beard and eyes that didn't blink much. "Your job's simple," he said, handing Cody a key. "Lock the gate at 10. Patrol the land. Keep the logbook. If you hear anything funny, write it down." Cody nodded. "What kind of funny?" he asked. Mr. Holt stared at him. "You'll know," he said, then walked off. Cody felt a chill, but the sun was still up, and $20 an hour sounded warm enough. Night one started quiet. Cody locked the gate at PM, the chain rattling loud in the still air. The ranch was big acres of grass and scrub, dotted with a few skinny cows that stared at him with glassy eyes. He sat in the watch shack, a tiny shed with a chair, a desk, and a lantern that buzzed like a trapped fly. The radio played scratchy country tunes, and he flipped open the logbook. Old entries were faded. Wind loud, 11:45. Cow moved funny, 2 a.m. nothing weird. He leaned back, sipping a soda, thinking this'd be a breeze. Around PM, the radio hissed static cutting through the song. A voice whispered, "Cody." He sat up, heart thumping. He turned it off fast, telling himself it was a glitch. The night stayed quiet after that, but he didn't sleep. Night two, Cody brought a book, some cowboy story, to keep his mind off things. At midnight, he heard a howl, not a coyote, but low and long, like it came from deep underground. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out. The beam cut through the fog, lighting up the grass, but it stopped at the woods, a thick line of trees. At the ranch's edge, the howl came again, closer, and the cows moved, nervous. Cody wrote it in the log, howl 12:05. He stayed in the shack, door shut, listening. The wind picked up, rattling the shed, and he swore it carried a word come. He shook his head. "Just tired," he muttered, but his hands shook when he turned the page. Jumpy. He told his sister, Jen, about the job. She was 19, smart, and liked spooky podcasts. "Shadow Ranch?" she said on the phone. "That's like Skinwalker Ranch. People see weird stuff, their lights. Voices, things that change shape." Cody laughed. "It's just a farm." Jen didn't laugh back. "Be careful, okay? Write everything down." He promised he would. That night, At a.m., the light started blue flickers in the woods, dancing like fireflies. He watched from the shack, breath fogging the window. They moved fast, then stopped, like they saw him. He logged it. Blue lights, 110. The cows went quiet, and the air felt heavy, pressing on his chest. Night 4. Cody brought salt. Jen's idea. It keeps bad stuff away, she'd said. He poured a circle around the shack, feeling silly but safer. At a.m., the howling came back, joined by scratches sharp, like claws on wood outside the shed. He peeked out. Nothing there, just the salt line glowing faint in the moonlight. Then a voice clear, deep said, "Let me in." It wasn't the radio. It came from the dark. Cody gripped his flashlight, shouting, "Who's there?" Silence. He logged it, hands shaky, voice 215. Asked to come in. The scratches stopped, but he stayed awake, eyes on the door. Night 5. Cows were gone. Cody checked at 3 a.m. The pasture was empty. No hoof prints, no broken fence. He called. Mr. Holt, who grumbled, "They wander." Checked the woods. Cody didn't want to, but he needed the job. He took his flashlight and salt, stepping past the fence. The trees were tall, branches twisting like fingers. The air smelled long sweet, like rot. He heard a moo, faint, and followed it. The blue lights flickered again, leading him deeper. Then he saw it, a cow, standing still, eyes black and shiny. It turned, and its face wasn't right too long, teeth sharp. Cody ran, dropping salt, and didn't stop till he hit the shack. He called Jen that morning. "Something's out there," he said, voice cracking. "It's not a cow." Jen went quiet. "Quit, Cody. That place is cursed." He couldn't afford to, but he started researching. Online, people talked about Shadow Ranch. Lights, missing animals, workers who quit fast. Some said it was a Skinwalker, a thing that steals shapes, tricks you, feeds on fear. Cody didn't believe it, not fully, but he bought a cross necklace and kept the salt close. Night 6. The fog was thick, couldn't see 10 feet. At a.m., footsteps crunched outside, slow, heavy, circling the shack. Cody locked the door, clutching the cross. The radio sparked on static, then singing, soft and old, like a lullaby. "Cody, Cody, come and play," it sang. He yanked the plug, but the singing kept going, echoing in his head. The footsteps stopped, and a shadow stretched across the window, tall, thin, with arms too long. It tapped the glass, tap, then whispered, "I see you." Cody hid under the desk praying, till the sun rose. Night 7. Cody planned to quit after. He told Mr. Holt on the phone. "One more night," he said. "Then I'm done." Mr. Holt sighed. "Fine. Don't go near the barn." Cody hadn't checked the barn yet, too far, too dark. That night, at a.m., the ground shook low. Rumbles like something waking up. The lights died, and the singing came again, louder from everywhere. He grabbed his flashlight and salt, stepping out. The barn glowed red, faint but steady. He heard Jen's voice in his head, "Quit," but he had to know. He crossed the ranch, fog swirling, and pushed the barn door open. The air stank wet, for old blood. Inside, the cows stood in a circle, heads down, silent. In the middle was a whole big, black, steaming. The singing came from there, mixed with growls. Cody's light hit something, a shape, climbing out. It was tall, gray, with a face that shifted, cow, man, then nothing, just eyes glowing yellow. "Cody," it said, voice deep and wet. He threw salt. It hissed, steaming where it hit. He ran. The shape chasing fast, claws scraping dirt. Back at the shack, he locked himself in. The thing pounded the walls, bam, bam, screaming his name. The cross burned hot in his hand, and he shouted, "Leave me alone." The pounding stopped at dawn. Cody grabbed the logbook and fled, leaving the key. He moved in with Jen, got a day job, but he hears it sometimes singing soft in his dreams. Shadow Ranch is still there, hiring night watchmen. Folks say the lights dance, the barn glows, and something waits watching, calling your name. Big old building hunched on a hill, windows dark like empty eyes, surrounded by pines that sway and sigh in the wind. That's Whispering Pines, a hospital shut down years ago, but still standing, rotting away in the woods. Riley was 21, a skinny guy with tired eyes and a need for cash. He saw a job ad, night guard, Whispering Pines, $18 an hour. PM to 5 a.m. He thought it'd be boring watching an empty place, keeping kids out. He didn't know what. Lived there, Riley met the boss, Miss Carter, at the gate. She was old, with gray hair pulled tight and a voice like dry leaves. "Lock up at 9, she said, handing him a key ring. "Patrol every hour." "Don't go in the east wing." Riley tilted his head. "Why not?" Miss Carter's eyes narrowed. "It's not safe," she said, then left. Riley shrugged. Old buildings creak, he figured. He'd worked nights at a warehouse before, no big deal. But Whispering Pines felt different, even in daylight. The air was heavy, and the pines whispered. Like they were talking about him. Night one, Riley locked the gate at PM, the chain clanking loud. The hospital loomed ahead, 3 stories of cracked brick and broken glass. He set up in the guard shack, a shed with a desk, a lantern, and a crackly radio. His job was easy. Walk the fence every hour, check the doors, log anything odd. The radio played old tunes, and he sipped coffee, flipping open the logbook. Past guards wrote stuff like, "Wind loud, 10, 30, or owl hooted, 1 a.m. nothing scary." At PM, he did his first patrol. The flashlight beam danced over the pines, and the building stayed quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Around PM, a laugh echoed soft like a kid from the hospital. Riley froze, coffee sloshing in his cup. He stepped out, shining his light. The windows were black, no movement. "Hello," he called. The laugh came again, high and quick, then stopped. He wrote it down. Laugh 11:05, probably the wind, he told himself, but his hands shook a little. Back in the shack, the radio hissed static, cutting the song. A voice whispered, "Riley." He yanked the plug, heart pounding. The night stretched on, silent now, but he didn't sleep. Night 2, Riley brought a book, a mystery to keep busy. At midnight, the laugh came back, louder from the west side. He grabbed his flashlight and walked the fence. The pines rustled, and the hospital's shadow stretched long. He heard it again, giggling, bouncing off the walls. "Who's there?" he yelled. No answer, but a window on the second floor flickered like a light turned on, then off. Key. Logged it. Giggle and light, 12. 10, the shack felt safer, but the air got cold, even with the heater on. He read his book, but the words blurred. His mind kept drifting to that laugh. .by night 3, Riley was edgy. He called his friend Mia, a nurse who liked ghost stories. "Ever hear of Whispering Pines?" he asked. She gasped. "The old sanatorium? People died there, sick kids, bad doctors. They say it's haunted." Riley chuckled, nervous. "It's just a job." Mia didn't laugh. "Be careful, Riley." Write it all down, he promised, but her words stuck. That night, at a.m., footsteps pattered light, fast inside the building. He shone his light through a cracked window. Shadows moved, small and quick, down a hall. He logged it. Steps inside 1:15. The radio stayed off. He didn't trust it anymore. Salt Mia's tip. It blocks bad stuff, she'd said. He sprinkled it around the shack, feeling dumb but calmer. At a.m., the giggles turned to cries, soft sobs, echoing from the east wing. He remembered Miss Carter's warning, but stayed put. Then a voice called, "Help me," clear as day from the dark. Riley's skin crawled. "Who's there?" he shouted. The sobs stopped, and the window above the east wing creaked open slow, by itself. He logged it, hands trembling. Voice and window, 2:20. The salt line glowed faint, like it was working, but he didn't feel safe. Night 5, the fence was bent. Riley found it at 3 a.m., metal twisted, like something big pushed through. No tracks, no scratches, just warped steel. He called Miss Carter. "Something's wrong," he said. She sighed. "Fix it. Don't fuss." He hung up, mad. That night, the cries came again, louder, joined by Bang's thump. Thump from the east wing. He walked the fence, flashlight shaky, and saw it a shadow, tall and thin, by the hospital door. It turned, eyes glinting red, then slipped inside. He logged. It. Shadow with eyes, 3:30. He stayed in the shack. Door locked. Till dawn, Riley researched that morning. Online, people called Whispering Pines cursed sick kids locked away. Doctors doing bad things. All dead by 1950. Guards quit fast, hearing cries, seeing shapes. Some said a tall thing roamed the halls. Not human. Riley didn't buy it, not yet, but he bought a pocket knife and kept the salt close. Night 6, the fog rolled thick, hiding the pines. At a.m., the bangs got wild crashing, like furniture breaking. He stepped out, knife in hand. The east wing glowed faint green, pulsing. A voice whispered, "Riley, come in." It wasn't a kid's voice, deep, wrong. He logged it. Glow and voice, 4:10. The shack felt too small after that. Night. 7. Riley planned to quit. He told Miss Carter. "Last night," he said. She grunted. "Fine. Stay out of the east wing." That night, at a.m., the ground shook low rumbles, rattling the shack. The lights flickered, and cries echoed, lots of them, overlapping. Riley grabbed his flashlight and salt, stepping out. The east wing door was open, green light spilling out. He heard Mia's voice and his head quit, but he had to see. He crossed the yard, fog swirling, and peeked inside. The hall stank what rot old medicine. Broken beds lined the walls, sheets yellow and torn. The green glow came from a room at the end. Door cracked. Riley crept closer, heart pounding. The cries grew, kids sobbing, begging. He pushed the door. Inside, shadows danced, small ones, like children, circling a tall figure. It was gray, thin, with arms too long and eyes like red coals. "Riley," it said, voice deep and wet. The kids turned pale faces, black eyes, smiling wrong. "Play with us," they chanted. Riley threw salt. It hissed, steaming. He ran. The tall thing roaring behind him, back at the shack. He locked the door. The walls shook, bam, bam, as the thing pounded. The kids' voices sang, "Riley, Riley," over and over. He clutched his knife, shouting, "Go away." The salt line burned black, and the banging stopped at dawn. Riley grabbed the logbook and fled, leaving the keys. He moved in with Mia. Got a day job, but he hears them sometimes cries, whispers, calling his name. Whispering Pine still stands, hiring guards cheap. Some see lights, hear sobs, feel watched. Don't take the job, something's waiting, and it knows you now. Dusty old mining town, tucked in a canyon under a big starry sky. Hollow Creek's been quiet for years, shacks falling apart, mines sealed up, and a wind that moans through the hills. Ethan was 24, a weary guy with dark hair and a grin that hid his worries. He needed money bad, car broke, rent late, so he took a job ad, night keeper, Hollow Creek mine. $22 an hour. PM to 6 a.m. guard an old mine, keep trespassers out, sounded dull. He didn't. No, it waited down there. Ethan met Mr. Grayson at the gate, a grizzled man with a limp and a squint. Lock up at 8, he said, tossing Ethan a key ring. Patrol the yard. Don't go past the main shaft. Ethan scratched his head. Why not? Mr. Grayson's jaw tightened. It's dangerous, he growled, then hobbled off. Ethan figured it was about cave-ins, old mines collapse, right? He'd done night shifts at a store once, no trouble. But Hollow Creek felt off, the air buzzed, and the canyon walls leaned in, watching. Night 1, Ethan locked the gate at PM. The chain rattling in the quiet. The mine yard was big rusty carts, a sagging shed, and the main shaft, a black hole boarded up tight. He set up in the keeper's shack a tin box with a chair, a lantern, and a radio spitting static. His job was simple: walk the fence hourly, check the shaft, log anything strange. The radio played old rock, and he cracked a soda, flipping the logbook. Old entries were short. Wind loud, 9:45. Dog barked, 1 a.m. nothing big. At PM, he patrolled. The flashlight cut through the dust, and the shaft loomed dark. All good, he thought. Around PM, a whistle blew sharp like a miner's call from the shaft. Ethan jumped, soda spilling. He stepped out, shining his light. The boards were still, no gaps. Hello, he called. The whistle came again, long and low, then faded. He logged it. Whistle, 10:05. Maybe pipes, he told himself, but his gut twisted. Back in the shack, the radio crackled static. Then a voice, soft and rough. Ethan. He smacked it off, heart racing. The night dragged on, silent now. But he stayed awake, eyes darting. Night 2, Ethan brought cards to play solitaire. At PM, the whistle blew again, 3 short blasts, like a signal. He grabbed his flashlight and walked the yard. The wind howled, kicking dust, and the shaft's boards rattled loose, like something pushed them. Who's there? He shouted. No answer, but a laugh deep, gravelly rolled from the dark. He logged it. Whistle and laugh, 11:10. The shack felt safer, but the lantern flickered, shadows jumping. He dealt cards, but his hand shook. Every creak sounded like that laugh. Night 3, Ethan was antsy. He texted his cousin Luke, a mechanic who liked scary movies. Heard of Hollow Creek? Ethan asked. Luke replied fast. Old mine town. Miners died, their cave-ins, fights. People hear stuff, whistles, voices. Ethan smirked. It's just wind. Luke texted back. Watch out, man. Log it all. That night, at midnight, footsteps crunched slow, heavy outside the shack. Ethan peeked out. Dust swirled, but no one was there. Then a knock thump on the wall. He logged. It. Steps and knock. 12. 15. The radio stayed off, he couldn't trust it. Brought Salt Luke's idea. Keeps spirits away, he'd said. Ethan poured it by the door, feeling silly but edgy. At AM, the whistle turned 2 words, help us, faint from the shaft. He stayed in the shack, but the boards creaked crack like they'd split. A shadow flickered by the fence short, hunched, gone fast. Leave me alone, he yelled. The voice whispered, Ethan, down here. He logged it. Voice and shadow, 1:20. The salt glowed dim, and he gripped his flashlight tight, watching the dark. Night 5. The gate was open at AM. Ethan swore he'd locked it chain. Dangling, no cuts. He fixed it, hands cold, and heard humming soft, like a work song from the shaft. He walked over, light shaking. The boards were scratched, fresh marks deep in the wood. The humming stopped, and a face pressed against a gap pale, eyes black, gone in a blink. He ran back, logging it, face at shaft 2:25. He called Mr. Grayson that morning. Something's here, he said. Mr. Grayson grunted. Ignore it. Old minds play tricks. Ethan hung up, mad and scared. Night 6, Ethan researched. Online, Hollow Creek was dark miners trapped in 1903, 50 dead, bodies never found. Guards quit, hearing whistles, seeing faces. Some said a thing lived in the tunnels, not human, older, angry. Ethan bought a cross necklace and kept the salt. That night, at AM, the ground rumbled low, shaking the shack. The humming came back, joined by Bang's metal clanging deep down. He patrolled, and the shaft glowed faint blue, pulsing. A voice called, Ethan, come see. He logged it. Glow and voice. 3:30. The shack felt too close, air thick. Night 7. The fence was down, posts snapped like twigs. Ethan found it at AM, no storm, no tracks. The humming turned to chants down, over and over. He stayed by the shack, but the lantern died, and shadows moved, tall ones, short ones, circling the yard. Go away, he shouted. A laugh loud, wild answered. He logged it. Fence broke. Shadows 4:40. Luke called that morning. Quit, Ethan. That's bad. Ethan didn't. He needed one more check, but he felt it watching. Night 8. The fog was heavy, swallowing the hills. At AM, the chants grew, dozens of voices echoing. Ethan stepped out, cross in hand. The shaft's boards were gone, torn off, blue light spilling out. He heard Luke quit, but his feet moved. He peeped down. The tunnel stank dirt with stone. The light pulsed, and footsteps shuffled, lots of them, coming up. He ran back, logging it. Boards gone, steps 5:10. The shack shook all night, whispers hissing his name. Night 9. Ethan planned to quit. He told Mr. Grayson. Last shift, he said. Mr. Grayson sighed. Stay out of the shaft. That night, at AM, the ground split a crack by the shack, steaming. The chants roared, Ethan, down here, and the blue light flared. He grabbed his salt and knife, crossing the yard. The shaft was wide open, a ladder dangling. He heard Luke no, but went closer. Shadows climbed, pale hands, black eyes, reaching. A tall thing loomed below, grinning, teeth sharp. Join us, it said. Ethan threw salt. It screamed. Steaming. He bolted, the chants chasing him. Night 10. Ethan locked the shack at PM, knife ready. At midnight, the crack widened, blue light blazing, voices screaming his name. The tall thing climbed out, gray, bony, eyes glowing. Ethan, it roared. Shadows swarmed miners, twisted, chanting. He threw salt, swung his knife, but they grabbed him cold with hands pulling. No, he yelled, kicking free. The shack collapsed with splintering as he ran to the gate. It flew open, and he stumbled out, dawn breaking. He left the logbook, the keys, everything. Ethan moved towns, got a day job, but he hears it whistles, chants his name in the wind. Hollow Creek's still there, hiring keepers cheap. Some see lights, hear voices, find scratches. Don't take the shift, something's down there, and it's calling.